Over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of apps that have come out and said, oh, this is going to do something cool with your two-dimensional photos. And it's just like a gimmick. It's a gimmick that people look at and enjoy and talk about for maybe a month, and then it's old hat. But I found one recently that I thought was so cool and had so many good applications that I'm actually making a YouTube video about it. Hi, I'm David Miller. I am a Los Angeles-based multimedia artist, and I'm going to talk about LeiaPix. LeiaPix, pretty much in a nutshell, takes you two-dimensional photos and makes them into three-dimensional looking imagery. This is not unfamiliar to anybody who's ever seen a Ken Burns documentary. It's not unfamiliar to anybody who's ever broken apart a photo in Photoshop or After Effects and then, positioned things as three-dimensional layers and kind of moved them around. But that process I just described is a pain in the butt, and it's not always perfect, and it involves you breaking apart a lot of layers. You can't just take a person in a background and take the person off the background and then kind of move things around in After Effects. Most things have depth that goes way beyond it. I mean, you can create depth maps to help you out, but you're looking at half a day's work, a few hours. LeiaPix does it in seconds, and I think it does a really good job. Easy way to sum it up, you upload your photo, it creates a depth map. You can set the focus point where you want this depth map to rotate around. It has multiple iterations of camera movements, so you can move side to side, up, down, circular, perspective, and then do sort of like pull-ins and pull-outs. I think this is super useful because as a YouTuber and a video maker, I know that when I'm presenting my photos on screen, if they're not moving in some way, they're very boring to look at. Now, the way that we move photos around a lot of the time is just sort of like scale it up slightly. I mean, you're cropping your composition, but you're just trying to give the viewer something to look at, just like an animation. If there's an animated film and it's a quiet moment, you still need something to move, like a breeze moving some grass or hair. Just having characters stand on screen and not do anything. Nobody can look at that at an extended period of time. I mean, if you put a version of a photo that's kind of scaling up or sliding across slowly versus one that's just on the screen and not moving and there's no person gesticulating wildly. And I think the reason why you want something moving on a screen is because the viewer expects something to move on a screen. When we go to an art museum, a gallery, and you see a work on a wall that isn't moving, the average retention rate of a viewer is less than 3 seconds for something that's not moving that they're seeing in person. So imagine how frustrating it is in the long run to have visuals on a screen that maybe you're going plus 3 seconds, but they're not moving at all. Now, the reason why Ken Burns used this effect in his documentaries so much is because it also brought history to life. So it wasn't just a movement thing, it was that this stuff is alive. I think of like Peter Jackson's recent World War I documentary where they recolored, retimed the frame rate and put voices into the mouths of the people on screen. It just brought it up to 21st century standards. It certainly was more engaging to have all of those elements than to see the raw World War I footage where we don't know what they're saying and the timing's a little bit off. And you want people to engage with the material, you gotta find a way to present it in something that's kind of cool to look at. Now, having a photo brought to life through LeiaPix, when done correctly, does have sort of like mysterious hypnotic power. And one of the cool things about LeiaPix is you can time out how long this animation takes place, how quickly this animation takes place. So if you're a little more of a planner with your YouTubing or your documentaries or whatever you need, you could have, say, an audio clip of a historian talking about a certain section and then know that you have these 3 photos that correspond with that. Maybe he's talking 15 seconds, 3 photos, break it down, 5 seconds each. You set LeiaPix up to do that, and now you have a nice flow to everything. And I'm talking a lot about using photographs in LeiaPix, but I found that you can just as easily do this with other forms of artwork. Throw them in there and then lay out the depth map. Actually, the way I found LeiaPix was an artist on Instagram had created a sort of cyberpunky landscape. I think he did it out of AI, but he broke it apart and put it into LeiaPix. Now we have that zoom through the city that has the correct parallax movement of the buildings. And I advocate for motion comics in all forms. I'll do it in Procreate Dreams, I'll do it in After Effects, I'll do it in Character Animator, but one more tool in the toolbox is LeiaPix. For sure, it's gonna work great on landscapes and setting the scene. And for those other parts where I just don't even particularly know what kind of animation I want, if I'm showing a whole landscape and I've got cars or I've got plant life and stuff like that, yeah, I can get that stuff blowing in the breeze, but let's try out some of these admittedly stock camera movements. We're not gonna have the camera start in a tree, come out of the tree, go on the ground, go through all the grass, all that stuff. But you know what? I don't need flashy camera movements for every single thing I do. I need motion. LeiaPix is an easy, affordable way to get that going, and I think it did a great job. There are some photos I threw in there that it just wasn't gonna happen. A lot of times it's because the elements in the background and the foreground were too closely interrelated. For example, if I had a line going behind me right now, and then it's trying to get the parallax moving, the line that intersects my body is just like, it's gonna be stretched and skewed in a little weird way at some point in the animation. And the way around it is don't use those kind of photos. If you're going to make artwork that you wanna animate, you just try and keep it cleaner in the background and make sure that there's a little more obvious depth between the objects in your image. There's also a function that allows you to pull back that sort of feathered boundary between subject and background. Works part of the time, doesn't always work, but it exists, just letting you know that. Highly recommend LeiaPix, check it out. You can get free downloads with watermark, and just playing with it, you'll have little watermarks all over your stuff, but you can already see the results that you'll get with the work that you're trying to put into it. So I think the photos that I did buy as 3D downloads, totally worth it. Stuff I'm gonna use in other projects, stuff I'm gonna use in YouTube, documentaries, comics, whatnot. Best of luck to you in your own creative endeavors. Talk to you next time.